I received a viewer request through email a while back to film a video about how I do my makeup. Now, my makeup is definitely not historically accurate, and I take a lot of creative liberty with it, but I do try to implement historical influence and practices into my makeup routine, and for that reason, I'm going to call it historically inspired makeup. I must admit that I do not wear makeup every day, and at the maximum, I'm probably only wearing it 2 to 3 times a week. I tend to prefer makeup that is a lot more natural or just enhancing my natural features, and for that reason, I think it often very much ties into the makeup of historical practice. There are 2 major myths that you always hear about makeup, and that is that in the 18th century, women basically looked like clowns because of how heavy their makeup was, and the other one is that in the 19th century, women didn't wear makeup because it was considered immodest. Both of these are not true, and there is plenty of historical evidence to show us that in the 18th century, women tended to prefer much more natural makeup, and in the 19th century, women did wear makeup too. I'll go into greater depth about this later on in the video as I take you through my own makeup practice. My own personal makeup inspiration comes from both 18th and 19th century makeup practices, so you will hear me referencing these 2 periods frequently throughout this video. I decided my faux fur and silk housecoat would be the perfect garment to wear for this video, as it isn't all that dissimilar from some of the at-home wear worn in the 18th and 19th centuries. Before I begin my actual makeup, I start out by prepping my face. Much of 18th century skincare was centered around how to take care of the skin, and in the 1772 book, The Toilette of Flora, a significant portion of the recipes are for skincare. I make this a priority in my routine as well, much as many 21st century individuals do. I will be mentioning a number of products throughout this video, but I should make it clear that I am absolutely not sponsored by any of these brands. If I ever am in the future, I'll be sure to let you guys know, as I think full transparency is the most important thing. These are the products that I truly use as someone that has extremely sensitive skin and therefore avoids synthetic chemicals as much as possible. That's why you'll likely notice a lot of my products are marketed as organic or natural, but I recommend, regardless of what the label says, if you're looking for products free from synthetic chemicals, definitely thoroughly check the ingredients. Greenwashing is a big thing now with marketing and branding. For those who are curious about which products I use throughout this video, I have listed them all down below. I start by applying an under-eye cream, dabbing it on gently using my ring finger. Next, I apply this strange-looking green serum, which helps to nourish my dry and combination skin. The next layer is a daytime moisturizer, which is fairly lightweight but still helps to keep my skin hydrated. Then, it's one of the most important steps, SPF. I utilize this non-nanoparticle zinc-based sunscreen, which is filled with skin-friendly and reef-safe ingredients. This is actually one of my all-time favorite products, as I have never found a relatively chemical-free sunscreen that is also lightweight. They tend to be quite heavy and greasy, but this one feels like a lightweight moisturizer and doesn't leave a white sheen. I make sure to get my neck as well, and my ears too, which I didn't bother to cover for this video demonstration. The final step of my skin preparation is a makeup primer, just to help serve as a base layer for all of my cosmetics to sit on top of. During the majority of the week, this is as far as I will go with my skincare routine, ditching makeup altogether, but for the purpose of this video, it's obviously about makeup, so I have to continue and show you all what I actually do the rest of the week. Before continuing on to applying makeup, I am just fanning my face a little to help all of the layers dry, and I also like to wait a few minutes. Using this air sponge soaked in water, I take my foundation and begin to dab it onto my face in a stippling motion. This foundation contains many nourishing oils and ingredients, and offers an extremely lightweight coverage that is almost like a second skin. I like to choose extremely minimal foundations like these because they help to keep a natural look to my skin, which I think is especially inspired by history. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, women did often wear makeup, and they would frequently apply it in ways that would help enhance their natural beauty. There are, of course, exceptions to this, especially during the 18th century, where some would heavily powder their face with white powder. This white powder was sometimes lead-based, but this was actually a less common practice and not at all a frequent occurrence. Many individuals by the late 18th century were already well aware of the dangers of the lead and white face powders. Because of this, many knew to stay away from them. There are many portraits throughout the 18th century that show women definitely not looking like clowns, as is sometimes thought to be the case, but rather they possessed youthful, healthy glows that involved plenty of well-blended rouge and a well-thought-through skincare process. I love the way 18th century makeup is strong and yet enhances an individual's natural features. You see similar instances in the 19th century as well, which is arguably even more minimal. But again, women were certainly made up, but in a way that was subtle and supportive of natural beauty. If you are curious about some cosmetics recipes that people actually used throughout the 18th century, I highly recommend the primary resource, The Toilette of Flora, which I have linked in the description box down below. Obviously, there are some questionable recipes featuring ingredients which are now definitely not safe to use, but plenty of 18th century recipes also exist in this book which feature natural ingredients that we know are still safe to use today. So please proceed with caution, but still utilize this invaluable resource. I just keep applying the foundation until I'm happy with the coverage, but as you can see, it basically looks exactly like my skin. The product just helps to even out any redness and create a smooth complexion. I like to fan my face a little more and wait another minute for the foundation to set in a little. The important step of concealer is next. I have used a lot of these predominantly synthetic-free concealers in my life, and I have been thoroughly disappointed with many of them. This is probably the one I have had the most success with in the past 8 or so years, and it gives pretty good coverage. I like to conceal under my eyes, extending slightly towards the cheekbones, and then also on the sides of my nose where redness tends to accumulate. Finally, I cover up any spots. At the moment I have a few along my chin, so that is where I am targeting the additional coverage. I use the same air sponge to blend in the concealer. Again, this is helping to just keep with the overall barely there look and make my skin appear youthful and bright, just like 18th and 19th century makeup tended to. Now that my main base is complete, before I powder my face, I like to use this liquid blush to begin rouging or blushing my face. The greatest element, in my opinion, of both 18th and 19th century cosmetics was the rouge. So in order to produce historically inspired makeup, it might be important to place extra care and attention on this part. The rouge gets centered towards the apples of the cheeks, and then it is blended outwards towards the temples. I also place some on my chin and just below my hairline, as it helps to create a youthful continuity all over the face. The back of the air sponge serves as an ideal way to blend the blush. Now it's time to powder my face. The powder I use is talc-free, as talc is actually linked to quite a few concerning health impacts and can cause sensitivities amongst some individuals. The main ingredients in this powder are cornstarch and rice starch, which actually isn't all that different from the starch-based powders of the 18th and 19th centuries. I love that using a starch-based powder like this one helps me feel a little bit closer to what a woman in the 1700s may have experienced. I use the very contemporary technique of baking to set my concealer, placing a significant amount of this starch-based powder, baking it onto the under eye region, and also around the smile lines. Then, after it is set for about 30 seconds, I knock off the powder using this kabuki brush. Then I proceed to powder the rest of my face, helping me achieve a soft, blurred consistency to my skin. Bluntly said, the people of the 18th and 19th centuries were not dumb. At some point, it became common knowledge that lead-based powders were not healthy, and so most avoided them, aside from a few individuals. The shock factor of a lead-based face powder, however, likely is why this myth is frequently perpetuated in 21st century society. There were, of course, plenty of questionable ingredients in 18th and 19th century cosmetics, including lead in some instances, but I just want to make it known that while 18th and 19th century individuals may not have had our science, they were still innovative and were just as concerned with hygiene and often safety. They just had their own methods, products, and access to knowledge. The powder will blur down the color of the rouge, so I go in with this other blush product, a rouge that is actually quite similar to the type one may have found in the 18th or 19th century. It has a similar bright red color, and also a little bit goes a very long way. This is another product I really love, and it's great to apply over the first base layer of blush just to help enhance the color. I also bring this rouge onto my lips, just like what may have been done in the 18th century, and I go a step further and also use it as my eyeshadow. This creates consistency all over the face and ties all of my cosmetics together. For the eyes, I utilize a soft blending or crease brush to smooth out the rouge, applying more as necessary until I achieve the desired look. I apply a clear gloss to my lips next, and this is done in the middle of the makeup process because I really want the gloss to sink in and help moisturize my lips. Another very contemporary step, I use a mica-based powder highlighter to bring some definition to certain areas of my face, using another eyeshadow brush to apply it onto the nose bridge, cupid's bow, cheekbones, and brow bones, blending with a finger as needed. 18th century makeup did not shy away from a strong, defined brow. During the 18th century, a burnt clove was often the method of choice to enhance the brows, but I choose to go with this brown eyebrow powder instead. I comb out my brows using a spoolie and then apply the powder in delicate strokes, starting at the middle of the brows, working out towards the tails, and then focusing in on a lighter application at the front of the brows. I remember hearing in my teenage years that eyebrows are sisters, not twins, so this is a general rule that I still try to follow. I must admit, however, brows is always the most time-consuming process for me and can generally take anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes, depending on how much trouble they are giving me that day. My general rule is just to do my best to keep the application as light and as natural as possible. To set my brows, I use a clear brow gel and comb them upwards slightly. At this point, my makeup is almost done and there are just a few finishing touches. One of those is applying a skin-toned lip liner. I like to use one that is extremely dull, that way it will only offer the softest definition and won't require the additional step of blending. And then it's time for mascara. Mascara actually became quite popular in the 19th century. In fact, the very first official mascara, which was marketed under that name, was created by the chemist Eugene Rimmel in the 19th century. You might recognize the name because of the popular Rimmel cosmetics. Mr. Rimmel's original mascara product is said to have been a mix of petroleum jelly and coal dust. We have certainly come a long way from that formulation, especially with some of the more organic, free from synthetic options that we possess today. For my mascara, I try to use a light hand and apply a gentle coating along the top lashes, as well as the bottom lashes to help give the effect of open and bright eyes. I am fortunate that my lashes are already quite dark, long, and curly, so I don't have to give them that much attention to achieve the look that I'm going for. At last, the entire makeup look is done, and the only thing I have left to do is put up my hair. I like to comb through my curls with my fingers, and also create a little extra volume by crimping with my hands. Then I pull all my hair back and smooth it out as best as possible, twisting the bulk of my hair and using pins to secure it in place. Finally, I use a styling gel to hold any frizz or flyaways down. My hair tends to get quite frizzy since it is at the awkward in-between of being both wavy and curly. As you can see, I did miss a piece of hair in the back, which I tucked in later on when I realized. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you've enjoyed this different form of content. A big thank you to the person who requested this video because it really did help give me the extra push that I needed in order to film it. And I'll see you all on Thursday for another video.